Okay, so here we are on our third session. So this is pretty exciting. Went through the original jump off just to get everybody kind of warmed up with things. We went through session 2 last time, where we were trying to really talk through some of the things such as, what is this vision thing? What is your personal vision assignment that you're guys going to have to do? What's the mission? What is that all about? You guys were assigned to do kind of an interview with a business person and also strategy as well. And then on this one, obviously, we're going to talk about core convictions. We're going to talk about some of your own convictions as we go through it, how you guys engage in that. Even have a conversation about maybe the interview that you might have had with some friends and what that was all about, how that went. And we're going to talk about why. Do we have a why? And we'll go through Simon Sinek a little bit around that. Talk about our DNA, some of the distinctions of what that means, and then who thrives at Integrity Capital. So to start off, who maybe wants to jump out in the front here and tell me, like, what are core convictions, and then how are they different than just a value in the way that it was described? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
So core convictions are the difference between values are that values are things that you say are really important to you and they matter to you whenever you're making decisions. But core convictions are the things that you won't budge on and you won't go against no matter what the consequence is of not following through with going against your core convictions. Like, they're the most important thing to you, so you won't stray from them.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like if you guys think about it, and I may have said this on the video as well, but I might value not having some chocolate, but if Christmas time comes around, I'm at a party, probably going to have some chocolate, right? Even though I value not having some chocolate, I'm probably going to buckle because it just looks so tasty, right? But when you get into core convictions, just like Lana said, is that it becomes, the stakes get higher, right? And something is a little bit deeper for you where you say, hey, that's just not something I'm comfortable budging on. And so that's how we try to distinguish between those two, because it's really important that you understand that. Just like I said before, when you guys go through your own process of trying to figure out what are those core convictions that I'm just not going to budge on. And maybe there's just some areas that you have values that go, I'll probably bend a little bit on this or not. So does everybody understand that? Does that make sense to you? Like Evan, Will, EJ? Yeah. Any comments around that at all?
I had a comment on it just like as I was going through the work that we were assigned. I was kind of thinking about how like this is Integrity Capital, and I always learned integrity to be like your character and who you are when no one's watching and who you are behind closed doors. And I see that core convictions are the basis of everything that happens here. So I think they kind of go hand in hand with even just the name of the business. It's like everything is about integrity, and I think core convictions go really hand in hand with your integrity.
Yeah, that's a great, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it's really, it is the core, right, of how we function. And just like you said, one of my coaches said the same thing, right? They're like, hey, your inner and your outer life, or what you're doing when nobody's watching, right? That's when you know if you're functioning with a level of integrity, right? You don't have a duplicitous heart, right? Where you're putting on this face over here, and then you're kind of putting this face on over here, and it's duplicitous, meaning that it's sort of contradicting one another. It's like, wait a minute, those two worlds don't really collide. And so I think that's an important trait for us to try to live out, even though we're not perfect and we're going to fall over, but it's an area that we want to be really stout in. And that's why we do that. Now, if you have core convictions, I guess I'll ask EJ this. what's really important about those? Why would you want to communicate that to people you work with and also the close people in your life?
Well, I think if something is truly a core conviction and that step above maybe a value, and it really does mean that much to you, you should have pride in sharing it with others. You should have pride in making connections to others who share similar convictions. And if it's really weighing on you that they are a little different than what you believe, maybe have a conversation. And obviously you're not going to change someone, but at least make sure they understand yours.
Yeah, just to be sort of upfront to say, look, there's something I'm proud of, something that's really important to me. And that's how you can deepen a relationship with somebody for sure, is to let them know this is what's important to me. That can either be a something that attracts or detracts, right? Depends on who you're dealing with and what the conviction is. The other thing, Will, so that's a good one. Will, what do you think? Why would you want to verbally communicate your core convictions with the people you work with and the people that are closest in your life? You're probably not going to go to the Circle K person and say, hey, let me tell you about my core convictions. Or maybe you do, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's important just to be vulnerable, put yourself out there, let people know that this is me, this is what I stand for. These are the things that I'm not going to budge on. And, just to let people know, what you see is what you get. I'm going to be the same person every day because this is what I believe in. And these are my convictions. So really just, like you said earlier, not putting up a face in one situation and then the next day in another situation, you're a totally different person. Just
Yeah.
letting your coworkers and your fellow employees know that this is me and what you see is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just there's a level of transparency that takes place, a level of authenticity which takes place. And again, that can provide a level of connection points, right? So you can have something you're connecting with somebody because they know who you are. I want you guys to think about this. When I communicate my core convictions to you, to my team, to my family, then what happens is my accountability factor goes from here to here. Okay, so think about that for a minute. The minute that I communicate to the world that my convictions are this, all of a sudden people go, well, you just gave me a standard that I'm going to hold you accountable to when you don't do that. And I'll give you an example of a personal failure in my life just to give you the point. So there was years ago when I get bombarded all the time by cold callers, right? Just do that when you have a business. So I remember that there was one gal that she was incessant, calling me all the time, leaving messages. And obviously I never called her back. But I remember one day I just picked the phone up and I didn't look, and it was her, okay? And I remember that immediately when she spoke, I was like, oh my gosh. And I just hung the phone up, okay? So I hung the phone up. And I remember it was towards the end of the day, I left. And the next morning I came in and there was a message on my machine. And this is how it sounded. Hello, Mr. Cotter. This is so-and-so from XYZ company. She goes, I want to let you know that I noticed that you picked the phone up and then hung it up on me. And she goes, I just wanted you to know, since the name of your company is Integrity Capital, that I don't think that was really something that you did with integrity. Okay. And I went, ouch, right? I was like, oh, wow, that hurt. And the reason why it hurt was because she was right, right? And so what I had to do, if I was going to not be duplicitous, was I picked up the phone, I called her back, and I apologized to her. And I said, thank you for doing that. Thank you for having the courage to call me out on me deviating from my integrity in that moment in time. I could have just spoke to you, politely said, don't, I'm not interested, so on and so forth. she thanked me. She said, thank you for doing that and calling me and letting me know. I said, I'm not going to buy anything from you, but I said, thank you for doing that. And so it was a good opportunity for me to remember that it's visible, right? My name, our name, the way I function. And I can tell you there probably isn't a week or two that goes by that I'm not having to go back and sort of go, gosh, I don't know if I really lived that out the way that I should have, right? So part of integrity is humility as well. Does that make sense for you guys? So because, we're not perfect. And so to say you're living at 100% is probably not realistic. That's what you want to, and that's the way you should function. But just realizing that you're probably going to fail at times, and you have to be willing to go, I did deviate from what it is that I did, and I need to get back into that. And I tell my team, Michelle will attest to this. I tell my team, I say, this is what we believe. This is our DNA. And I said, I'm just as accountable as your boss, as everybody else on this team. That means if you don't hold me accountable, then you're letting everybody down by not saying that to me, right? So that's the permission that I give people to say, it's really important to do that. So with that in mind, what do you guys think about that? Just this idea that accountability goes up with core convictions. I'd love to hear from a few of you. Maybe Evan, you can chime in since we haven't heard from you yet.
I really like the feedback loop that kind of creates. It makes everybody very vulnerable, which is, I think, the only way to expose, like you're talking about, each other's flaws. And that's what keeps each other accountable, is when those flaws do come out, you slip up and you don't hold integrity at the highest level. You've got the person next to you who will call you out, or call you up, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that and correct that behavior. So next time when you have that same situation, you'll make the right choice and you'll have some integrity. And so I really like that feedback loop. And I think that comes across in a few different areas, especially in the work we've been doing. Kind of with the innovation from failure. That's kind of the same idea. You have to have the failure there to have the innovation in the first place. So no, I really like all of those ideas.
It's great. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to chime in on your thoughts about this idea that when you do that, your accountability goes up? And I know that can be a little scary at times because nobody wants to be held accountable, even though we know it's good for us, right? So what do you guys think?
I think that your accountability definitely goes up, and it definitely can be scary, but I think about it with the way of, like, I taught a lot of cheer camps, and I did cheer for a long time. So I had a lot of little girls that would be looking up to me and looking up to the rest of my teammates and whatnot. And I just remember my coaches always saying, they're looking up to you and they have these expectations of you, and you have to be, at your best behavior and show them that you are, just as great as you think that they are. And another thing is, I have a lot of dogs, so dogs are important to me. So I always see these quotes that pop up, and they're like, be the person that your dog thinks you are. But I just think the more that you put value in who you care about, like thinking of you, like who you care cares about, like how you are, I guess. I don't really know how I'm trying.
That makes total sense. It matters to you what other people think, certain people, right? So you want to make sure that that's being displayed.
Yeah, so that circle of people that you are sharing those core convictions with, the accountability goes up because you care about what they think of you, and you want to maintain that reputation and make sure that they continue to think highly of you.
I really like that. And, that reminds me of one of the things we talk about with our daughter. We say, you want really good friends? She says, yes. And I said, you got to be a great friend, right? Because great friends want to be around with great friends, right? They don't want lower standard friends. So that's a great point that you bring up in terms of relationships, which matters big time. Was there any of the core convictions for you guys, maybe Will or EJ, that struck you for our firm that kind of resonated with you at all as you went through it? I know I might be putting you on the spot, which is part of my job, but that's okay.
I resonated a lot with the Christianity aspect, the Christ model and what comes with that with the firm. That's been a big part of my life for sure growing up, and just like core convictions and integrity and not being hypocritical with those. I kind of can relate a lot to Christianity and religion, and trying not to be hypocritical with that. And I find that hard sometimes for sure. And like another thing I was going to say is I have a little sister. So I find myself a lot of times where I'll be telling her like, never do this, you can't do this. You can't do this. Don't grow up to be this. And then she'll walk down to my room and I'm doing exactly what I told her like to never do, So it's like, it can be hard, but that's another thing. Like she keeps me accountable at 11 years old, for doing things like that. And I don't know, like I said, I guess I'm getting a little off topic, but yeah, no, I love the Christ model aspect. I love that core conviction, and I relate to that as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And we do. And the reason why we distinguish is because, you don't have to be a Christian to work here. We say the Christ model because the focal point is about service, right? Even though that's my faith, you don't have to have that to work here, but we want that element to be displayed, meaning that others are more important, right? And so we want people to know that that's the way we want it to display, is that we're here to serve other people, right? In a way that we say, hey, one of the manifestations of that is that in our industry, there's, you'll learn about this, but there's a tremendous amount of, hey, I want to take this to the institution that will pay me the most fees. Okay. And so I'm going to, use the client to make as much money as I possibly can, even to their detriment. Right. And so we've just chosen not to take that on, meaning that we don't take back end fees intentionally because we don't want to lead somebody to a direction that is not in their best interest. So thanks for sharing that. Wanted to create the distinction, but I like what you shared for sure. Okay, anybody else? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump on that too. A couple of the firm's core convictions actually lined up with some of mine. Honesty, no matter the consequence, and apply candid but gracious feedback. Two of mine, I'm looking at them right now, is always do the right thing in every situation, even when nobody is looking, and always be honest, even if the truth is hard. So those line up pretty spot on with some of my convictions. But one that really struck me that I didn't think about, but I really liked, is excelling and gaining wisdom to innovate and grow. Kind of just, you're always looking to learn. You always want to know more about every situation possible. And you just want to be a sponge just to soak up as much knowledge from as many different people as you can. I think that is very important in business, but life too. You're always looking to learn. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And that is really important to us, is that we want to be wisdom seekers, right? We always call it wisdom, plan, do, right? We want to seek wisdom, we want to plan for it, and then we want to do. And it means that there's people that know a lot more than I do. And so I quickly want to talk to them and soak up their knowledge as fast as I can so I can go further faster if I do that. And you do that through books, which is a quick, fast way. And then obviously mentorships, and then just different groups that we are a part of. So love that. It's definitely a part of what we do. So here's a question I have for you guys. Like, what the heck do core convictions have to do with making decisions? Like, why does that, like we talked about a little while back about, like, I really challenge you guys to really try to hone in on those core convictions, because it's something you've got to really go back to, not just once, but twice, 3 times, 4 times. And it's not just because, you want to just be boring and repetitive, but you want to really think about it and say, is there anything more I need to clarify on that? Anything I needed to think through on that? And that'll happen as life goes on. It'll start to sort of give more formation to it because you'll have more life experiences. But what do you think it really has to do with making decisions? Because we're making decisions all the time, right?
I feel like core convictions and decisions go together most because I think that core convictions come into play most when there's temptation and temptation to not follow your core convictions. So for me personally, like I have that above all else to be kind. Like that's my biggest thing, and kindness is the biggest thing and most important thing to me. But sometimes it is, someone makes you angry or someone does something you don't like, or things just aren't going your way, and it's easy to just be mad or be unkind or unpleasant to other people. And it's taking a second and taking a deep breath and thinking like, okay, well, what are my core convictions and what does this decision say about me in the future after I make it? And I think that's kind of how those two go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so it makes you pause, right? So all of a sudden the temptation, the difficulty, the struggle comes up. If honesty was the one for you, Will, all of a sudden someone kind of tempts you with like, hey, Will, if you do this, you'll get a bonus, right? And there's a deviation from the core conviction, right? And all of a sudden you're in this moment where you go, okay, sort of the test, because I always say there's fractures under your feet to find out how serious you were about that core conviction. And it always happens when the pressure gets turned up, right? Everybody likes their values till they come under scrutiny or pressure. So that's when you find out like, okay, do I really believe this? And then that moment comes up where that choice has to make. And whenever you think about this, I want you guys to ponder on this. When you have a core conviction and it comes to making decisions, there is a cost that is associated with that conviction. So anytime you place up a core conviction, there is a cost associated with that. What do you guys think I mean by that? What do you think, Will, that I mean that there's a cost with that core conviction you have?
Yeah, so I'll go back to honesty. Say that you're working with somebody and you really don't see that relationship moving on in the future. If you're honest with them about how you feel and what you see happening in the future, you may lose that relationship, but you're sticking to your core conviction. So that's just one example that I thought of off the top of my head.
That's great. I remember years ago, this was probably about 7 years ago, I was working on a very big project up in Gilbert, Arizona. It's a fairly prominent firm. And it was referred to me through a great client who was a contractor. And we got about 60% of the way through the project. And I was noticing that the client I was working with was wanting to continue to sort of skirt the line on things. Just little things started to come up. And I would always talk to her about it, say, hey, I think we just need to kind of stay with this, right? Just square one, right? Let's not try to deviate from the truth, so to speak, right? And there came a moment where we were about 65% of the way through the project. And she said something to me that was very unsettling. She said, the guy that referred you, we're supposed to be working with, he says, we want to cut him out of the deal because we're just getting a little agitated and we have a better thing over here. And so, we're just going to go ahead and, not deal with him anymore. And I remember pausing, and this was the moment. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Am I going to follow her, or am I going to stay with this and stand the line? Because if I stood the line, what that would mean is I would lose the deal, and I would have to walk away from a lot of money. And quite frankly, at the time, it was a lot of money that I needed. And so I remember saying to her, I said, I really want to encourage you to not do that. And I think you should call him up and have this conversation with him, as opposed to just kind of like cutting somebody off and moving on. I just don't think that makes sense. Okay. So I was candid with her, but gracious in trying to explain it. And I remember she said to me, she said, no. Let's just move forward and forget it. So I got off the phone, went to my wife, and I said, I don't think I can do this. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach to think that, this whole thing is just wrong. So the next day I called her up and I said, hey, I want to let you know, appreciate the opportunity. We're going to walk away from the deal. If you want to stay with the lender, that's fine with us, but I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore, because this is a client. I have a relationship with them, and I'm just not willing to do it. Right. And she did not like that, but she moved on. She actually did go ahead and close the loan without me. Right. But I was comfortable with that, but it cost me a lot of money. And so it hurt. It was painful. I mean, I wish I could just tell you I was elated and doing backflips, but it really stung. I mean, I just thought, oh my gosh, was that the right decision? And obviously the answer was yes, but that was tough. And it cost me something to have that conviction and to be willing to work that out. So the reason I bring that up to you guys is because it's really important that you understand that when we have core convictions, there is a cost. Sometimes it's minor, but there have been many times where I've literally lost clients because I wasn't willing to budge on our core convictions. Now, my question to you after that is, how do you think those types of decisions, even though they cost us something, can give us peace of mind? What do you guys think? How can those kinds of decisions, even though they're painful and they can cost us something in the short term, how do you think they can give us peace of mind in the long term?
I think that something that costs you a lot more is not having peace of mind, and that comes with guilt. And whenever you do something that doesn't align with what you really believe or goes against what you said that you would do, I always feel like this huge sense of guilt, and it will eat away at me for so much longer than I feel like anything else is worth. It kind of just gets in your head and it will mess with everything else that you do. So, there might be a sacrifice that comes along with sticking to your commitments and what you said and your core convictions, but at the same time, it is no greater than the cost of knowing that you don't align with yourself anymore.
I love that. That was really insightful. So this idea that the cost of not doing it is just so much more weighty against our peace of mind than the cost of doing it, right? So it's too great of cost. So we're doing this kind of economic weighing out to go, man, if I don't do that and I buckle in my conviction, the cost is way too expensive in my soul. I mean, it would just be so gut wrenching to make those kinds of decisions. And so I love the way that you put that. So I think I know, some of your core convictions that you guys shared with me. So thank you for sharing those with me. And so, maybe one or two of you guys can share, like, hey, here is this one core conviction. Like, Will, you shared the honesty. I'd be curious to say, why is that so important to you? Why is honesty, no matter what, such a big deal for you, Will?
Yeah, first of all, it's been something that has been instilled in me since I was a young kid. And, just if you're not honest in a situation, you're not being fair to yourself, but you're not being fair to the person that you're dealing with. And, I always appreciate it if people are honest with me, even if it's something that I don't want to hear. I know that it'll benefit me in the long run, and vice versa for me, being honest with other people. I know that sometimes it's not going to be what they want to hear, but I'm going to hold them accountable, and I'm going to be honest. But other than honesty, one that I find even more important to me is to find joy in everything that I do. Try to detach from the result and just don't focus on the process. Don't focus on the day-to-day grind, if you will, because if you do that, you tend to get overwhelmed and bogged down. But if you just focus on finding joy in everything that you do, the results will take care of itself.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that core conviction you shared about just finding joy in everything. What a great conviction to really fight for joy, right? You're looking for the things of how you can really have joy in the moment, and that does take a lot of thought, and there is a deep meaning behind that, and also just even the honesty. it's a way that you can show how you care about somebody too. Because you're sharing, like, I'm going to be upfront and honest because I care about you enough, but I'm not willing to sort of put that under the rug. And I just think that's a way you also deepen relationships, is through trust. People can see they can trust you because they know when you say it, you mean it. It actually has some teeth to it. So that's really, really good. EJ, anything that's a core conviction for you to say this is really important, and maybe share why that's so important with us?
Yeah, so one of mine was integrity in action. And it was kind of taking the idea of like honesty in speech, but almost to another level, and actually living it out in what I do and the ways I live. And that's just been so important to me because I've seen it ruin relationships, honestly. In my own life, I have hurt other people and people have hurt me. And so it's like that, like words do sting, and they can hurt a lot. But if you're actually not honest in your action after being honest in your words, I think that's even worse. And I think that's also a harder thing to do, to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So that was something I really strive to do. And I think by doing that, it builds up your ethos, your reputation. It creates those relationships you want. And by not doing that, it completely can crash everything,
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it just takes a long time to build that trust, and it take just a little bit to have it all whisk away with one bad decision. So that's really good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
So question, you guys were asked to interview some friends. I don't know if anybody had a chance to do that, but how was that for you guys to interview some of your friends? And if anybody had a chance to do that, if they'd like to share what that was like. Did you learn anything new?
For me personally, it was very interesting because I did it with a few of my friends and I got a lot of the same answers. And so I kind of was thinking about what you were talking about at the beginning. Like, obviously, not all my friends make the same decisions, but they all still have very similar core convictions. Like, I heard a lot of honesties, a lot of kindnesses. But, kind of like what Lana was talking about, everybody has that point where temptation will break them and they won't follow that core conviction. So that was definitely the most interesting part about that interview. And then just kind of hearing what their reasons were behind it. Each of their core convictions, like honesty and things like that. A lot of them had like a childhood story behind why they had this core conviction, or maybe something with their family. So those were really cool to hear. But yeah, it was very interesting.
Awesome. I'm glad you said. It sounds like you started to see this theme, even though they made different decisions, they all have these core convictions. There were some thematic things, which I think will be interesting as you interview your friends. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's chat a little bit. I'm glad you guys would do that. If you haven't had a chance to, definitely do. I think it'll be fruitful. Maybe you'll learn something new about your friends that you didn't even know before, and might deepen the relationship a little bit more as you go through the exercise.
I wanted to touch on that just like real quick.
Yeah.
I interviewed two friends that have been great friends since a really young age. And, going into it, I'm like, they're not going to be able to tell me anything I didn't know about them already or anything, but just to really see like what they said, and everything that both of my friends said really did match up to what they have, how they've been in my life, the relationship we have, and how they do act every day. And it's something that's always kind of just gone under, I haven't noticed that, but to really like hear them explain it, it's like, wow, they do live that way. And they really try. So it brought me closer. I had two great talks. So
that's pretty awesome. That's great. I'm really glad to hear that. I think that's super important, that if you want to have really good relationships with people, then you have to become excellent in asking questions, right? Because then you're starting to dig down and find out about people, understand them. People want to be understood, and you also want to understand them as well. So I love the fact that we're able to kind of deepen that relationship with some of your friends. That's fantastic. Was there anything in the video for Simon Sinek that struck you guys that was maybe insightful, that you went, that was pretty cool, the way that was explained, or or maybe the perspective on it when it came to this concept of why?
I think that with everything that we, I think that with everything that we do, the why is like the most important thing. I mean, everything that you do, everything you say, even with learning things, I always find that, when I'm in an accounting class and then I ask them why, and someone can't tell me why I'm doing what I'm doing, it makes it so much harder for me to, understand and care about or want to do. So I think that, it's not just, in business or in certain decision making. I think that it's kind of foundational to every single thing. Like there has to be a why before there can be anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. There's gotta be some undergirding, some thoughtfulness that comes to that as well. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. And the way that Simon compared his golden circle to the way our brain is kind of the way it developed over time, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
How like the newer parts kind of dealt with the what, but our basic instincts always come from the why and the how.
Yeah. And do you guys remember I talked about how what are people really buying into this concept of the why, right? Like there's something deeper, it's like, you've got all these different phones, they're phones, right? So why do you choose to go to, Mac? Why do you choose to use an Apple? I mean, it's an Apple, right? But there's something much deeper and a vision that was really birthed there that people bought into this vision and this concept of a why, a deeper why. So any thoughts on that, Will, that struck you?
Oh, yeah, I had never thought of it this way, but I thought it was great how he said that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Right.
And just seeing how he went from what to how to why, and then on the inverse going from why to how to what, it really gave me perspective on just the concept of him saying people buy why you do things, not what you do. I think it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you think about this why thing, when people are buying into your why, um, what is it? Because, ultimately we're much more than just thinking beings, right? We're feeling beings, right? So we want to have experiences. We want something that have much more depth than just, using the left side of our brain versus the right side of our brain, right? So we're looking for something much deeper that has purpose and meaning in what we do. And so that's why you have to really dig in to your why when you are functioning. And when you're doing business, there has to be a drive behind that that's pursuing it. And so we always call that the fuel that drives us, right? If we don't have the reason, you guys remember I talked about the kid that sat down with me and he said, I want to be rich, I want to make a bunch of dough. And my question was, why? Why do you want to be rich? It's not that it's bad to be rich, but the question is why? Because if you have the wrong why behind that, that could be wrong. But if you say, well, I want to eradicate poverty or I want to do this, whatever that is, if there's some thoughtfulness into it, then it has much more substance behind it as we go through it. So have you guys thought through your own whys in your life? Have you guys kind of thought like, why do I do the things I do? Have you guys given some thought to that at all?
I think a lot of my why is that I want to be the best version of myself. Like I've seen myself change. I'm a pretty self-aware person, and I've seen the differences that I've had in personality over the years. I've seen, my work ethic change and my like feelings of responsibility, just everything about myself. The more that I take notice of things, it's like I want them to be better and I want to improve and be the best person that I can, not just for myself, but for the people around me, because I think that you have a great impact on the people around you, even if you don't realize it. So my why is really to just, be the absolute best version of myself that I can and follow, my core convictions and what's really important to me and put my best foot forward always. And yeah, that's just kind of my why.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that, Lana. And what's fascinating to me, and one of you guys may have brought this up, but is when you have a deep why, it generally has to do with, obviously, like you said, being the best version of yourself, but it always generally spills out somewhere. It's going to touch others' lives somehow because you want to have impact. There's something, Will, you talked about this too, about this concept of joy. But the greatest joy we have in many, many instances is when we are serving and helping other people, right? All of a sudden we're pouring ourselves out, and there's this sense of joy and satisfaction we get by doing that. We've experienced that in sports. All of a sudden you guys are banding together and you're battling and you're fighting for your sort of teammates, and there's a sense of joy that comes with that, right? So this deeper why is generally touching outside of us and pouring outside of us than just making it 100% intrinsic. So I love that you share that and how you want to have an impact. And so you want to be optimal so that you can have impact, right? I can't give what I don't have, right? So if I can't give somebody what I don't have, then I better get some of that so that I can give it, right? So it's a great philosophy and a great why. What else? What do you guys want to share? Sort of maybe your why or something that's driving you to do what it is that you want to do in your life. And maybe you guys are still thinking through that too. I'm not saying that you have to have that answer right now, but I would like to hear maybe from one or two more of you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. So whatever situation I find myself in life, whether it's an internship, for example, or being involved in any kind of team sport, team environment, I want to leave that team or that company better than how I found it. I just want to do whatever I can in my power to make the situation better, even if I step into a company, organization, etc., that it is thriving, that has all their ducks in a row, I want to do whatever I can to make it better, find the weaknesses and find what I can help improve, whether it's something big or something tiny. I just want to do everything in my power to improve it.
Great. I love that. Which again, just goes back to this idea that it's generally other centered, right? You're thinking, I want to do something that has impact for others, right? That if I go, whether I'm here or not, that I'm having some impact, right? And so there's a sense of pride that comes from that, sense of satisfaction that comes from that. So I love hearing about that. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, sir.
Maybe one more on the why, and then we'll talk about DNA before we wrap it up. What is a deeper why?
I guess I could share. Yeah, definitely. Something that was pretty prevalent, at least when I was a kid. Obviously, there was the tragedy of 9/11 that happened around the time we were all growing up. And it was pretty common just to see things on the news where people weren't able to live freely and they couldn't do the things they wanted. But I was always told that here in the US, you have the best chance at living a free life. And so the reason I got into finance in the first place was because it was the one avenue I knew would help teach me the most about being independent and financially free, so that I could, help other people do the same thing that I was trying to do for myself. And ideally, just help other people and have that sense of freedom that maybe not everybody else has the chance to get. And so that's kind of what motivated me toward this path, for sure.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Just that, the place you have the ability to have freedom, you translate it into how can I have optimal maximum freedom by having financial freedom? And then obviously why? So I can share that with other people. It's great. I love it. So again, you're going to see a theme that starts to happen here, right? Is the greatest sense of our deepest DNA, as we kind of talk about the Christ model, is others are more important, right? To really think that way and function that way is where you have the maximum capacity of meaning and the maximum capacity of joy as you go through life. And so I just love that. So thank you. We're going to talk about DNA before we leave. And so what do you guys think we mean when we said DNA? And I might put someone a little bit on the spot to say, could you go through some of the things that were the DNA for our firm? Who wants to be brave?
There was the I own it. It's just taking ownership of it and being prepared to, step up and take the responsibility for it. And then there's, oh gosh, I was brave for a second.
That's okay. I love it.
There's the relay baton, handing the relay baton, which is just kind of cultivating the growth inside of the company rather than outsourcing it or trying to find someone else to take on those positions. It's, getting the people that you already have and adding value to them. And then running lean, instead of having, a million people to do a million different jobs, it's like, we have one person and we want to give them as much opportunity as possible and let them grow as much as possible. And again, like add value to them, which we talked about the Warren Buffett story.
Yep.
And I actually wanted to share my mom, she actually just a couple of days ago got rid of it, but she has had the same truck since I can remember. Like, I cannot remember a day of my life that this truck was not here. And she just got rid of it because a friend of hers needed a truck and it was a situation, but it has been with us and it has moved from house to house with us. So it was really funny to me and I resonated with it, but we're very fix it Felix. And, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of family.
I love it. Fix it, Felix. I love that. I'm gonna take that.
Yeah, we definitely put a lot of value in improving what we have rather than just going and buying a million more things. And then the 70% where it's, doing 70% and how that can be freeing. And to me, it was kind of like doing the 70%, you're going to make mistakes regardless, and they're going to come up regardless, and they're going to, get in the way anyways. But by doing 70%, you can spend that extra 30% preparing for the mistakes and getting ahead of them and moving on and moving forward. And I don't know if there are any other ones that I'm not remembering, but
Good job. Everybody give Lana a round of applause. That was good. Good job, Lana. Was there anything else anybody wants to backfill that might have been there or not?
Yes, I wanted to touch on the obtaining 70% in running.
Okay.
Also, whenever I first saw it, I was kind of struggling to wrap my head around it. But then I recalled on my football career, and whenever you're in practice and you're not sure about your responsibilities on that one particular play, coach always says, don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you're going to make a mistake, make it full speed.
Yeah.
We can always go back and film and fix your responsibilities, fix your technique, but don't be afraid to make a mistake and just make it full speed. And, I kind of wanted to ask you for a real life example of this one particular point, just because I was having a hard time kind of wrapping my head around it at first.
Yeah, that's a great question, Will. So let me kind of flush this out and I'll give you a little context behind it. So I want you to think about, this idea of like looking for the perfect plan. Okay. So someone has perfectionism in their mind and they go, I'm going to make the perfect plan, right? So we're going to work at it and work at it and work at it and work at it. And what happens is they spend so much time on the plan itself, it actually never gets implemented, right? And so you don't even know if it was a good plan or not, but you wanted to make it perfect, but you're not quite sure if it is because it really never made it off the shelf. And so a B plan implemented is 10 times better than an A plan that sat on the shelf, right? Continue to try to be an A plan. So one of the ways that this manifests is, and I'll give you a couple of different examples. So years ago, software companies would want to bring a new software to market. What they would do is they would literally go through the whole implementation process of building soup to nuts on the software. And it took them 3 years. Okay, can you imagine that? So 3 years to go through the programming, the coding, all these things, only to bring it to market to find out that nobody wanted it. So they spent millions and millions of dollars, okay, on these projects, multi-millions, only to find out nobody even wanted it. Or if they did, it was way off base from what the consumer even wanted. And so what happened is they started to come up with what was called an MVP, or a minimum viable product. What they would do is they would try to just come up with just enough that they felt like it was at least something deliverable. So it might have taken them 3 to 6 months versus 3 years. And then they could go to market and get feedback really fast. So the idea is let's quickly come up with a kind of an archetype or some level that we can start to say, is this in a implementable range right now that we could have somebody at least utilize to see if we get feedback. So I'll give you an example in our firm. So I had a concept or an idea in my mind. I thought, we get a lot of requests for people still trying to figure out, hey, I'm trying to penetrate into the multifamily market. I've invested a ton. This is the first time I'm going into the apartment industry, and they have questions, right? Lots of questions. And we would spend tons of time, right, explaining all of this, which is fine. The problem is it's just a lot of time to invest. So I thought, could we come up with an actual little university and see what the client does? Would that be value oriented to somebody? So as opposed to going through the whole process first, what we did is we just came up with the concept, picked the sample size of people, and then took it out to them really fast within a couple of weeks to say, would you want to use this? Would you pay to use it? And then we got response real fast of yes. And we got a bunch of feedback. Then we went and actually put the whole thing into place. And so that was an example of the 70% and then go. And so we want to try to get enough information so that we feel like we've done enough due diligence, enough research, but then we want to get it out there as fast as possible so that we can get some feedback if the world likes it or not. So does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. Yeah, thanks for touching on that.
Yeah, it's good. And I know that we're slowly on time, but I do want you guys to know that's really important. Good job today. You guys were really engaged. And so keep it up. I love hearing from you. So let's just talk about next week. Okay. Or sorry, not next week, but Thursday. So basically for next week, okay, what I want you guys to go through is the assignment on the feedback from friends. Okay, we're going to go through why celebrating matters, why innovation matters, and then you're going to have an innovation assignment. That's probably going to be the biggest time for you. So I want you guys to really work on it. Now, if this takes you more time on the innovation assignment, totally fine. Okay. But I think the part that I want you guys to really do is to engage in it and start getting together, because it's going to be collaborative. You guys are going to have to work together. And so it'll be a good, fun project for you guys to innovate and come up with some cool idea. We had our last group come up with some pretty cool ideas, or a cool idea, I should say. So go through the exercise. Somebody's going to have to take the lead, right, and get everybody together. And this is a good opportunity to get those creative juices flowing. So, and that'll be the plan for coming up on Thursday. Again, if you need more time on that, totally understand, but I want to at least get the process going. So sound good?
Sounds good.
You guys are awesome. You're doing great. Keep it up. And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Yes. You guys too. See you.